32 deals in 90 days.
Just do the work and the work will take care of you. Every single day we are working.
Everybody wants to work with the lead that is going out today and wants to buy a property, or the listing that has to go on the market today. But all of the leads that you'd have over the years, eventually you're going to sell or buy. And you really have to find a way that works for you to stay in touch with them.
32 deals in 90 days. Welcome to the podcast. That's what we're going to be talking about today. We are with a powerhouse real estate team. Today in the studio, we have Andrew Seifter and Charlie Gale. They are a powerhouse team with Ecofine Properties, and they've done 32 deals in the last 90 days, and we're going to figure out how they did that and what's making them so successful. Gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that because, you guys, I know you guys, I've known you guys both for a while. You guys have the mindset of thriving, not just surviving, and you're just going after it. And I love that because the market's tough. Rates are high, properties are sitting. Some agents are really having a hard time right now, but you guys are just putting, full throttle down, going after it. So let's talk about that. So tell me about 32 deals in 90 days. How do you do that?
Well,
you want to take it?
I think the benefit right now for, Florida agents in this area is we're in season. So there's a good handful of those deals that were seasonal deals with the clients that we worked with over the past several years. And as you know, Ryan, the market was so hot a few years ago, you would have 10 deals on one listing. So a lot of those clients that were here in those times and tried to buy got really frustrated. But it was a matter of staying in touch with them over a long period of time, bringing them back in as the market settled down a little bit, giving them options. And I think that's what anybody who's buying a home really wants is several options to purchase so they can make the best decision for themselves. So a lot of the deals that we've had are those type of deals with clients both on the seasonal side and the non-seasonal side that we've worked with for a very long time.
Yeah, and I would agree with everything you said, but I would say even just taking it a step back, why or how have we gotten here is we work every day. We're in the office every day. Charlie and I each only miss sitting one open house for the entirety of season. I kind of define season January 1st through March 31st. So we each had 11 open houses over that period of time. We both pretty much worked 7 days a week since January 1st. So it's a lot of wax on, wax off consistency, but just showing up. There was a really good quote when I first got into real estate that said, just do the work and the work will take care of you. And every single day we are working and we're making efforts into current business and future business. And it's just about establishing a pipeline. Everyone throws that term around, but very seldomly do people actually understand what it means. It's a million micro tasks that accumulate. And that's, I think, what we're able to accomplish. We're not always looking such, big picture. We're also looking little picture, and the little picture, it adds up over time, and it just leads to a pretty solid pipeline.
We talked about this a little bit earlier, just the consistency. And I think just as salespeople in general, whether you're a loan officer, a real estate agent, and any other type of sales, the biggest problem people have is just the consistency of making the calls, getting the face-to-face appointments as a realtor, doing your open houses, doing your follow-ups. You lost a listing appointment, you're making the call. What happened? You're surveying your clients. You're doing the consistent things that yield the results. There's no magic pill that you're just going to swallow, and next thing you know, you have 32 deals in your pipeline that you're closing. It's just the consistent results over time. You mentioned something about just staying in touch with your clients. And it just shocks me on how many people don't stay in touch either with their past clients or prospects that didn't convert. So, tell me a little bit about how you do that.
Ryan, absolutely. Everybody wants to work with the lead that is going out today and wants to buy a property, or the listing that has to go on the market today. And those are important. You have to take care of those. But all of the leads that you'd have over the years, eventually you're going to sell or buy. And you really have to find a way that works for you to stay in touch with them. New properties coming up in the area, new areas, properties that either, are going to help them upsize or downsize or seasonal. I think you really have to listen to your client and then understand the area so that you can help them go into other communities they didn't even think about when they were buying. as everything transitions in this time, from the clubs updating, from the golf courses updating the new golf courses, I think it's important to have a really good understanding and a good overview of the areas that your clients are looking in and you're working in and specializing in, to really keep everybody aware of what's going on. And it's the touches. It's not the property that is automatically auto-generated to them out of the MLS every day.
Right.
It's sending them a text message, hey, I thought of you today. I saw this house. Check out the red bedroom.
Right.
It's that personal touch. Then they know it's not coming from an automated system that's just kicking it out. Right. I mean, a lot of people look at those, with access to Zillow and Realtor.com and the pictures and the aerials. It makes our job easier, but at the same time harder because the information's out there. So really pushing it out, texting it out a lot of times to prospective buyers and sellers, with sellers, letting them know, hey, this property just hit the market. This one just went under contract. You have to keep that constant contact with them throughout time because you never know when they're going to buy or sell. What's changing in their life? Is it a new job? Did they just have a new baby? Is it a divorce situation? If you don't stay in touch with people all the time, you lose clients.
So you're saying we should be in relationship with people?
We should be in relationships, absolutely.
Absolutely.
We get numb. I mean, I know I get numb to it. Like anytime you sign up for something and you're just constantly getting these automatic emails, it's like they're so automated and impersonal. Like you just get numb to it after a while.
Absolutely.
But if it was the personal touch, where I was like, hey, Ryan, hope your daughter's doing good. I saw this, thought you might be interested in the backyard. It's really cool, half-acre lot, blah, blah, blah. And I would at least respond. It's like, Charlie, I appreciate that. That's great.
That's the thing. It's, I've had the privilege of both being a sales leader and a salesperson. And what I always used to tell, agents I was working with was this is a relationship business. It's not a sales business. I don't look at it that way, at least. Yeah. You have to obviously have some sales acumen and, with negotiation and stuff, but you have to make someone feel comfortable with you, that you have their best need at heart from the first conversation. And if you can't establish that instantaneously, then you're pretty much dead in the water, and they're going to move on. Because for most people, this unless you're buying or selling a business or a mega yacht, the home purchase or sale is pretty much going to be the largest transaction an individual person is ever involved with. So they've got to trust you, and you've got to prove yourself. So it's less about the sales and more about the relationship.
So how do you so one of the things that I know you're really good at is just making the calls. Like you'd love just to fire up that phone and bang the phone and make a lot of calls. So how do you establish that rapport quickly?
It's intrinsic. It's hard. I think part of what's made us successful, and it's not to toot our own horns, I just think we both have kind of an X factor when it comes to sales and building, relationship, as and I used to manage over 100 agents, and you can teach a lot of things, but teaching those interpersonal skills is hard. So for me, it just comes to me. I don't know what it is. Even if it's not a prospective client, it's another agent that I want to enter into a deal with. I've got to pay attention to my relationship there so that they like me and they want to work with me in the deal. So you asked me that question. I think about a conversation yesterday that happened. An agent named Chris called me, and I instantly just, hey, my brother's name's Chris. You got a great name. And he was like, oh, my cousin's name's Andrew. Like, so we just hit it off just immediately. And so sometimes it's just taking a shot and just throwing out something that most people I think are thinking, but they're afraid to say it because they think it's going to make them sound silly or stupid or something, but I just kind of speak my mind and it ends up working out.
Yeah, I think leaning on your personality too helps because it takes away from, you're just selling a home. Yeah. When you connect with people, maybe because they have kids, or maybe they're going to have kids, or maybe they have kids in college, or kids are out of college. Yeah. If you can build that connection with your potential client, it helps the whole process because then they begin to trust you. They're interested in what you're doing, who you are as a person, and it really helps. And I think that injecting personality into those first-time relationships or meetings helps a ton, developing a good relationship for a client.
Yeah, it moves you from when you have that relationship, it takes you out of that commodity category and brings you down into that personal category. Because when you're in the commodity category, It's like, okay, what are you going to list the house for? What are you going to charge? How are you going to do it? What services are you going to perform for me? Like, it's just all business.
Yeah.
But when you get down here, and it's like you're talking about your families. Oh, my family lives right down the road. This is what we love about the neighborhood. This is how I'm going to sell the people looking at your house. Because I can sell it from personal experience.
Absolutely.
Yep. Things like that. It just takes it completely out of that.
And it helps Ryan too. He's in the early stages of his family. So he has young kids. I'm in the latter stages. My kids are in college. So that helps because we can share clients. So from a team aspect, that's very beneficial for us. If we have a client with younger kids and they're in that mode, it's great for them to work with Andrew. If they're a little bit older and they're getting ready to go to college, or they're in college, or they're graduating, those conversations are easy to have with your clients as you're looking at homes, and it becomes very friendly. And a lot of my clients I'm very friendly with, so it's very beneficial to have a partner.
Let's talk about that. You brought up like the team. So we're seeing this now in the real estate industry where agents are joining together to create these smaller teams, sometimes larger teams. And you guys recently formed a team.
Yeah.
So tell us, what is the advantage to that, and like why are agents doing that, and what is the advantage to a potential client?
I mean, I think there's different reasons agents do it, and I've watched it for years from the management side, and a lot of agents go at it from a standpoint of motivation of they want someone to lean on. I mean, it's part of a team it helps in any situation, but I've seen it where a lot of agents end up teaming and it's short-lived just because it is an imbalance of who's doing the work. Right. So I've seen it fail from that perspective, and I've seen it, and been a part of it flourishing from a different perspective, and that's that, we both bring the same, drive to the table. We both have complementary personalities, like he said. We went to the same school. We've got, similar family makeups. It's, we're very similar, and that just kind of worked that way. But from a business standpoint, why is it beneficial to a client is, two's better than one. I really believe that. You've got two extremely seasoned, competent agents that either one of us could step into really any situation that our clients have and be able to, fully carry the load and not have to, be calling, a broker or someone for an answer all the time. I think that's a benefit to someone. And there's, we cover each other. One of us is sick, one of us is on vacation. There's always someone consistently there. And for me, and I'll let him give his perspective, I've always been on a team. When I got into this business, I started as an assistant to a high producing, agent and a part of a team. And I just always enjoyed the aspect. I think it's more fun to do it with someone else. Yeah. But I'll let Charlie speak. He was a solo bird for a long time and a part of a team way back when.
Yeah, both. I've been on both, sides of the fence. And really, one of the reasons I asked Andrew, or we agreed to team up together, is because I really believe in servicing the client. So if we take a listing, obviously we don't want to just put a lockbox on a door and let anyone go in. What the idea is, we're selling your property. And I believe that, teaming up gives us an opportunity to really service them on a level that you can't do as a single agent. I also believe that we've teamed up together. We're not relying on assistants to do everything. They're not going out and they're not showing properties. They're not opening the door for new prospective buyers. Yep. Andrew and I really are putting our stamp on it by going out and doing that work ourselves. A lot of teams look at that a little bit beneath, and they have, assistants that do all that work. I think it's important, if you want a long-term client for this sale and down the road and for referrals, that you're in front of them, you're servicing them. Yeah. There's many teams that have very competent assistants, but I believe that, a homeowner on the buy side or on the sell side is hiring you because of you. Yeah. And I think it's in the way I conduct business, it's very important for me to go from A to Z and handle everything. Having people assist us in that is important. But Andrew and I, I think in our short-lived team, we've done a very good job sharing clients, working with clients. We both interact with clients. We don't take one of the clients just ourselves. They know we're a team, so they know each other's personalities and our strengths. That's important.
I think it helps that neither one of us has this huge ego. I've run into many a salesperson, regardless of industry, but it's definitely out there in real estate, is if you have two extremely strong personalities that are vying for the spotlight, or they want to be the lead agent on the listing or whatever it is, a lot of times I don't think that's going to work out. We both have the ability to be alphas or take the back seat if that's what the situation necessitates. So I think that is, I think it's part of how we're able to be successful, and knock on wood, we haven't been at each other's throat in 6 months about anything. So hopefully it stays that way. But, we do believe in, we have a lot of goals. I'm sure we'll talk about goals. We are in the process of hiring our first assistant. But it's for a lot of reasons, like Charlie's saying, it's for different reasons than I think your typical team leader does it. From what I've experienced, your typical team leader is trying to hire the assistant and pawn off the hard work to them. Right. But we need the assistance for some of, not the hard work. We need our time back to do more of the hard work to bring in more business. And that's how we look at it. Yep. So an assistant for us is going to be huge to scaling our team to where we want it to be. But it's to give us time to do more cold calling, do more prospecting, do more networking. We view our role as the principals of the team to be the ones bringing in the business, not the other way around. And a lot of times you see team leaders that expect, the first assistant in the door to be the cold caller, to be the door knocker. And it's, right. I don't think you get the results you think you're going to get in that scenario.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, the admins really should, even like in our business, when you hire an admin or a loan partner, like their job should be to take away like non-green time is what I call it, but non-dollar producing activities, like take those off the plate, like the paperwork and following up on a pay stub that was sent in upside down and sideways, and the guy can't figure out how to use a
all
scanner.
Things that are important, all those very important,
but they're really
time consuming.
Yeah, I always look at it like a doctor nurse. It's like the best way to think about it, I think, when we look at an admin to a sales leader is the doctor nurse. Like if I injure my knee and I need an orthopedic, and my neighbor refers me to Dr. Joe, the orthopedic, I can call Dr. Joe and, hey, I was referred by my neighbor Howard. He says you're great. You fixed up his knees. He's like, excellent. I'll have the office call you on Monday. We'll get you in an appointment. Well, the office nurse or admin is going to call me, schedule it. I'm going to go in. I'm going to meet with the nurse. She's going to weigh me, get the x-rays, take the blood pressure, do all the paperwork. He's going to walk in for maybe 3-4 minutes and diagnose the situation. This is what we're going to do. We're going to do surgery. This is how it's going to work, blah, blah, blah. Any questions? Great. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But he's using his expertise in a compressed amount of time.
Absolutely.
And that's really, I think, how sales leaders should look at the admins.
Yeah, agreed.
Absolutely. Agree 100%.
Yeah.
But a lot of people do, like what you were talking about, is they want to like pawn off important things, like, meeting with a client or asking for that client, like a current client referral. An admin's not going to be able to do that.
Or a price reduction in a contentious situation.
It's
the hard calls. You don't want to make them, but that's,
it's part of the business.
We're doing 32 deals in 3 months because we're fielding the hard call. I mean, it's all hard, especially in this type of a market.
An old friend of mine always used to tell me, he's like, your income is a direct reflection of how many hard calls you can make.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. I would agree with him 100%.
That's a good way of looking at it.
Well, I think there's a big advantage of a team, and I think you guys work well together. Not all people do work well. Plus, you guys have such a great back office, like Ecofine Properties, like Jeff, like the tech ops is just like incredible to support, like what you guys do. Let's talk a little bit about like the current market. What are you seeing in the market today? Say, in what's different, say, from a year ago?
Well, look, I think we're moving back into a traditional real estate market where properties aren't selling 2 hours after you put them on the market. Properties that are ready to sell are selling. And I think there's different ways to look at ready to sell. Yeah. Ready to sell is you're fully updated. You have the hurricane impact windows, you have the quartz countertops, you've got all the new wood style flooring. Everything looks showroom. It looks like one of the many shows, real estate shows that everybody watches when you go in and update a home. That's generally a big percentage of the buyers today. That's their expectation. So when you have that home that's fully updated like that, those homes are still bringing a premium price in neighborhoods. The homes that are challenging are the ones that aren't. So maybe they've got an original bathroom. Maybe they have some carpet that needs to be replaced. The roof's 18 years old.
Yeah.
How the advantage for those sellers is you have to price it aggressively for it to sell. So it's a market where, as a realtor, you have to have that expertise, and you've got to be able to evaluate the situation you're going into. To advise to your client, here's where, from a professional standpoint, I think your property's going to sell. And here's the comps that justify that. Because so many times, I think realtors and sellers get involved in what the price is on the market today. That price could be inflated by 10 or 15% over where it should sell based on comps. And Ryan, you know what you're willing to loan on the property. So I think it's going in with that expertise, being honest with your seller, and then they're the driver. But to give that expertise to put out their expectations that are realistic. Right. And I think that's something that, 2 years ago, we were walking in homes saying, well, look, the last one sold for $900. Let's list this for $975, and you're going to get multiple offers, and we're going to sell it for over $1 million. So it's not that way anymore, and it's changed. Yeah. And I like this market better because you can negotiate. And from the buyers, prepping your buyers what the expectations are. We're not going to go in and get a property 20% under value. We'd love to, and we'll do our best to get that. But to give them realistic expectations of where the price should land.
So what's the conversation with the seller right now where you're like, listen, we're going to list at 9, but how are you setting the expectation?
Price it right.
If they're not, say they're not a fully updated, maybe a little bit here and there, but like, what's that conversation like? And how are they receiving it, sellers?
For me, what has been helpful is kind of talking about, you're asking about the markets and how they compare, talking about the market we came from versus the market we're in now. And some people get it instantly and others are resistant. Our area is unfortunately, I would say, ripe with a lot of sellers that are stuck 2 years in the past where you could list, 50,000, 100,000 over the last comp and you're going to get it, or maybe even more. We've moved into a different market where homes that are priced appropriately are the ones that are selling. We've been burned. The market changed. It seems to change every 3, 4, 5 months. And we were burned at the end of last year on taking a listing that when we started conversations with the seller, the optics of the price and the lack of inventory in the neighborhood, everything was beautiful. But it was a very particular client and it took 6 weeks to get on the market. By the time we went live, the whole market changed. But the original price was stuck in their head. And it was very hard to get that down. So we run into those situations, but if I were to walk in right now and your home was worth, I thought we should list it at 850. You told me list it at 9. I would be actively working to pre-negotiate the first price reduction with you and say, listen, I'm here, you're there, you're the boss. We'll set it where you want to see it. But 10, 14 days from now, if we're not seeing results, if we're not seeing certain criteria, I'm coming to you and we're going to reduce the price to the realistic number. That's the effort being made, and it works in a lot of cases. And sometimes, seller.
I agree.
Resists.
I totally agree with Andrew. You have to, if you know it's overpriced, and you'll know when you walk in. You have to bake in. I'm calling you in 15 days. I'm calling you in 30 days. And we may have to make an adjustment. The market will speak to us. If we go on the market and we're not getting showings or offers, it's telling you this is not the price that's correct for this property today. And you're selling your house today, not 2 years ago, not 2 years in the future. It's today. So you have to listen to what the market's telling you, and you have to adjust accordingly. And one thing that we always joke around about is real estate, time is of the essence. And you have to strike today. It can always change tomorrow, and we have to live in today.
So is it better, is it a big disadvantage to price high and then do price reductions? Or is it an advantage because when you do price reductions, obviously that goes out and people monitor that and they're like, oh, wow, this one just reduced.
I think in this market, it's a disadvantage. Or does it show it's
desperate? And
I don't think it shows desperation. I think that in any market, there will always be a percentage of buyers that are hot and dialed in on one specific neighborhood. And right now, in an up and down rate environment, which we'll talk about, and a few other factors. Inventory is rising, but it's, if I'm looking for a home in Jupiter Farms and I'm under $800,000, I'm looking at the home immediately the second it comes in the market. But if it's overpriced and I know that, and I don't want to make an offer, the initial excitement, it dies. And then by the time the reduction's coming or whatever, I've found reasons as the buyer to rationalize why it wasn't the right property to begin with, et cetera. So I think overpricing on the front end in this market, you can lose those people that would write offers if it was priced at $750 where it should have been versus $800, because the offer is going to come in at $700. I mean, that's the reality we've got. We're negotiating 3 deals right now actively. All 3 happen to be on buyers' behalf. All 3 of those buyers have gone in 8 to 10% below the asking price, and they're coming to those conclusions on their own. It's, some of the times it's not even at our direction. It's just the nature of the market.
So how does that work? Like, you go on a listing presentation, and Bob, the realtor down the road, came in and said, "Listen, guy, I can sell this place for $950," and then you guys go in and listen. Here's the comps.
Yeah.
I mean, we're 900, but we need to pre-negotiate possibly 875 or 850.
Yeah.
And you're being very straight with them, very real. Is that a better strategy? Does the client immediately want to go to this other agent where they're going to price reduce? Or like, how does that does that work?
Ryan, it's a challenge as an agent going in behind that, because putting myself in a seller's shoes, if somebody tells me I can sell this for $975 and the next guy comes in and says $900, I'm going to gravitate towards the guy that says $975.
Right.
So, the way I generally handle it is, listen, you're in control. We're going to list this property where you tell us to list it. If it is $975, we're willing to give it a shot. But here are the challenges by doing that. Right. Comps are only going to say that this is going to sell for $900. Here they are, and we go through the comps with them. Here's, the house down the street that sold. It had a pool. It had hurricane impact windows. It didn't have an updated bathroom. Yours doesn't have hurricane impact windows, but it has a pool, and you have the bathroom that's updated. So like an appraiser would, going in, this is an up, this is a down, this is how we arrived at this price. Yeah. And, we've been on a few listings recently where prices have been elevated, and we argued against them, and we lost the listing. Mm-hmm. And we've seen now where price reduction, and it's still on the market. Yeah. And literally in season, these were a couple seasonal properties where I think they would have sold at the price where we advised them to sell it. Yep. They're still on the market. And now they're below the price that we gave them in the beginning. So pricing properties is very important right now. Yeah. Because
extremely.
Every agent, Andrew and I, we have a board, we use Follow Up Boss to really organize ourselves as much as we can. And we know what clients are looking for what. And we know what neighborhoods and what areas. And when those come up, we shoot them over to them immediately. Here's a new house. This one has these features you wanted. You should really go after this. Mm-hmm. So if it's overpriced, Andrew and I will both advise them that, hey, there's some negotiating room here based on comps. So I think that perspective is very important, in the roundabout, to make sure that your client's educated, and hopefully they'll listen to you as an advisor.
And I think, building on your initial question, there are different types of sellers. There are sellers that listen to these conversations. If it's, you went first and then I went second, different listing agent presentations. And there are some people that are very pragmatic, and they gravitate towards the person that says, look, I could tell you whatever number you want to hear, but I have to also come from a place that's rooted in reality. And in this world, the reality is the closed black and white comparables on paper. Yeah. And that's what every agent, that's what every buyer, that's what every appraiser, it's what they're going to look at. And then you have other clients that are more emotional, and, this is the best house in the block, and I know it is because I did this, and this. And, but there's all sorts of ulterior motives. It's really, they raised their kids here, and it's holding them back, and they're not ready to give it up. So subconsciously, if we list it higher, then I can hold on to it for a little bit longer. Like there's all sorts of psychology that goes into these things. So for us, and it's always, we're constantly getting better at it all the time. We are good, and we're good for each other because we learn from our mistakes, and we learn from other experiences. Like, he's mentioned in the past, every time we lose an appointment, we ask why, just so we can better ourselves. But sometimes you just lose it because you were too logical and you weren't into the emotion. Sometimes we walk away from overpriced listings because we know the type of property or whatever the situation might be, it's going to be such a detractor from doing other business. And sometimes it can become a negative thing to your other clients if you're sitting on a listing that is just overpriced and, you know, has an emotional client, those sorts of things.
Yeah, I agree. And what I like about you guys is, like, I know both of you, like, you guys always shoot it very straight with clients. And I do the same thing. Listen, you're not going to win every single deal, but at the end of the day, when you're honest with people and you show that consultative like approach, like, most people really gravitate to that and respect it.
Yeah.
I mean, I deal with this all the time where, you know, a client will say, well, you know, what's your rate? We're at 6.75. Oh yeah, well, I talked to this other lender. He can get me 6.25. I'm like, I mean, have they looked at your credit? No. Well, you know, but on their website it says.
Well, and I think
Or
if
what are
we're
they charging you for that? Like, there's so many other factors,
Yep.
you know. But the only thing I can do is I can shoot it straight. I can be honest with you, and 9 times out of 10, if they go to the lender, they end up circling back. Sure.
Well, I think that if we're talking to an audience out there, and if it's an agent that just got in the business or considering, you know, a lot of the place we're coming from is a lot of experience. Just not even just in selling real estate, but in being consumers of real estate, buying multiple homes and being through the process. So for us, we've been through so many situations where we can confidently go in to that conversation and address the seller and address the last agent that said it's worth X. But a lot of times the last agent that said it's worth X, they're nervous. And a lot of agents go in and they shoot for the highest number that they think they can rationalize because they want to win the listing. And they're afraid to, you know, lay out the facts. But it took years for me. You know, I've been doing this for 5 years. Charlie's been doing this well over 20 years. Being on a team when I started, I was exposed to hundreds and hundreds of deals in a very short period of time. So I got a lot of education quickly. But I remember the first few where I was nervous. And I would just tell the client what they want to hear because I want the business. And sometimes you don't even think about it. But as an inexperienced or a newer, younger agent, it can be so easy to fall into this trap of just tell the client what you think they want to hear and not what they have to hear.
100%. And that kind of leads into, you know, we talked a little earlier about like negotiating. And like, you know, sometimes like with newer agents, you know, the you know, kind of the thing that holds them back from a negotiating standpoint is they don't have the ability to walk away from a negotiation, like to do like a takeaway close, so to speak, because they really need that commission. And like anytime you're in a sales situation, no matter what industry, if you have commission breath, you know, where you're really trying to make a deal out of your own self-interest, people recognize that right away. And it's really tough. But having the confidence, like being in the business 20 years, you know, not like you don't have to have this deal. You can really just position it. What's the best thing for my client? And sometimes the best thing is we put the offer in. You know, they didn't like the offer. Let's walk away. And maybe we circle back. Maybe the listing agent calls back.
Yeah.
What are a couple, or what's your position on negotiating?
There's a lot of nuance that goes into it. Each situation's different. A lot of times it starts with who's the other realtor. Who are you dealing with? Yeah. You've got to be able to read the room, and you've got to be a quick judge of who's on the other side of the deal. So, you know, you run into a lot of agents that are just so principled sometimes in things that are not rooted in reality, but you know, based on the initial conversation, what they're going to turn around and advise their client. So you've got to know how to take that personality and advise your client through the negotiation. So there's a lot of nuance. Pace, timing the deal is extremely important. It took me a long time to learn, and I didn't understand the concept at first. But learning when to divulge, just maybe not even that, learning when to deliver the counteroffer has enough time elapsed for both parties to just kind of let reality set through. There's different parts of deals where, you know, a client might, a seller, if you're representing the buyer or the seller, they've got to go through some of the stages of grief. And if you're negotiating too quickly, they can't get to the, you know, point of that grief cycle to where they've taken acceptance of what it is, and then now they can make a pragmatic decision, not an emotional decision. So there's a lot of nuance that goes into it, and it's I wish there was a silver bullet for every deal. But like you said, takeaway is a strategy, when you're negotiating and then all of a sudden, boom, you take it away from the other side. And then emotions start to come. And then a few hours later, they come back and, hey, no, come back on the deal.
I think a lot of agents also, they don't realize, like when they're first starting in the business, like if I'm sitting with a new agent, I always explain like how, if it's a finance deal, we have it pre-approved, always let me know when you're submitting the offer. Because I love to call the listing agent.
Sure.
I mean, first off, it's great for me to meet somebody.
Absolutely.
It's an easy call to make. But I can provide a lot of clarity and I can help sell the deal. I'm like, hey, listen, Andrew's sending over this offer over on Donridge Street. Just want to let you know we already have all the docs on it. Mm-hmm. Income, credit, everything's approved, everything's verified. We have it through underwriting. We put on there a 7-day commitment. It's no problem. I'll get my appraiser out there tomorrow. We'll get the appraisal done, within your inspection period. This is gonna. Oh, by the way, have you worked with Andrew before? No, I haven't. Oh, by the way, he's a great agent. You're really gonna like. So I help sell the client, help sell the agent. That's just from the lender standpoint. But I think agents. You said this earlier. Like agents, you're also selling the listing agent too. It's not just the seller; it's the listing agent, and it's that relationship you have with the listing agent. That can be a huge impact.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of agents, when they first start off, they don't understand that piece of it.
No, they don't. And a lot of agents are afraid of the listing agent. And a lot of agents feel like you have to be stern and you've got to stand your ground. I think, like I said earlier with buyers and sellers, it's relationships. We work with a lot of agents multiple times a year in the Jupiter, Palm Beach Gardens, West and North Palm Beach area. You see the same agents most of the time on listings. And if you develop that relationship and there's respect there, I think that helps in the negotiation. And each deal's different. Depends on where the property's priced as to how much you can negotiate. And knowing that and understanding your client. Is your client price driven? Does he want the absolute best deal he can get? Or is your client home driven?
Right.
That's their dream home. So if they're paying a little bit more for it, they're okay. So it's understanding that. But Ryan, I agree with you. In this market, you have to be able to walk away from a deal to get your client the best deal possible.
And what Charlie just explained to me, and so many agents don't get this, is you are working for the deal. A lot of agents, you have to remove your own emotion from it. Your ego has nothing to do with it. If you won or you did some fancy thing and you beat the other agent, that's not what it's about. The working for the deal to me means, did the buyer get the home they want at a price that they're good with? And did the seller sell the home with a price they're good at? There's generally always that middle ground, and that's what you're working for. You're trying to get to that middle ground. It's not always about winning. It's both sides. Like, to me, a successful deal is when both buyer and seller feel like they won.
Yeah, 100%. So what are a couple things that separate you two in the marketplace from other agents?
I just think we're available. We answer our phones and we work. And we work hard. One thing that I didn't anticipate in real estate when I got in 20 years ago is it's like a 24/7 job. I mean, I was on the phone last night with a client that I rented their home, and they needed a plumber at 8:30 at night. They had an emergency, and they were leaning on me rather than just going into, going online and finding a plumber. They leaned on me, and I was more than happy to help them because in the future, they'll remember that.
Yeah.
If you don't come through, they'll remember that. And I think that was the biggest thing is really understanding after being in the business for a while that you have to be available. And that's probably the most important part. And then working. Andrew will tell you, we're writing contracts at 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, sometimes 10 or 11, and delivering them. We're getting our final counter offer at 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. And we deal with a lot of agents that aren't as successful, and you call them at 6 o'clock, it goes to voicemail, and they call you back the next morning at 8:30 or 9 o'clock. And, if I was selling my home and my own personal home and I hired somebody like that, it wouldn't make me as happy as it could have. Well, looking at this date stamp, you got this yesterday, why am I getting it today? So I think it's important to deliver that information in a timely manner, be available, and to answer questions. this is a stressful market for sellers and buyers. You know, sellers are looking at their home being on the market for a longer period of time. So it takes constant contact and touches with them to reassure them that it's just going to be a little bit longer process to sell. And buyers, you know, their questions are rates coming down tomorrow? You know, everybody thought rates would be at 5 now. They're not. So it's adjusting to, okay, this is what my payment is today. With 2 or 3 years down the road, it may be being better. And, you know, like we've talked many times, there's ways to get your payments down. There's ways to negotiate that into the deal. And then to, you know, get some reprieve for a year, 2 years, or 3 years. And then in the end, rates will come down some. So you'll have the availability to refinance. So I think all of that's important.
What else from like, say, like a marketing standpoint, would you say separates you guys?
See, again, I think this is going to be unsatisfying to you and to a lot of people. I'll start this by saying we are ramping up massively what we do online. We recognize that we're in the old times right now. We're not flashy. We're not in your Instagram and your TikTok constantly. That is coming, as everyone knows. But it's what he said. We work, and I know that's not a satisfying answer to people. We get asked constantly. People stop us in our office. People call us. I'm so slow. Why are you guys so busy? We show up every day. We manage our database. We make phone calls. We sit open houses. We meet people. We're accessible, and we're just working. And that's what separates us. We have a lot of discipline. We both have a lot of reasons why we do this. We have families. We have wives. We have bills. We live in an expensive area. You got to work. But in my past life as a sales manager, I hired and dealt with so many people, and there's a very common reason people get into real estate. And a lot of the times is, I want the flexibility. Yeah. I don't want a boss. I want to be my own boss. It's all these fanciful things that, you know, pop culture and reality real estate shows have preached for years, but it's not those sexy, glamorous things. It's grind. It's you're going to go to bed some nights and not be able to sleep for an hour and a half. Like last night for me, I was up all night thinking about the 3 deals we're negotiating, the one we just put under contract, all these social media goals we have now for the future, how they're going to get executed. Like we live, breathe, and eat it because that's just what the industry necessitates to be successful.
Yeah, and Ryan, you can ask my wife because she'll roll her eyes. You know, we'll be out to dinner. I'm like, I'm going to the restroom. She's like, no, you're not. Okay, I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Good old restroom phone call.
Yeah. So you know, but I mean, in order to be successful in this industry, that's what you have to be. Yeah. In my eyes, no buyer or seller wants to wait 3 hours to get an answer. They just don't. They if you call them and say, look, I'm doing the best I can, I'm going to get you an answer. We've got a delay on the other side. That communication. And I think so many times myself, I get wrapped up in text messages and or emails. When you have that personal call to tell them what's happening, it's you, it's your voice. They want to hear from you. Mm-hmm. Believe me, they do. And it relaxes them. Even if you say to them, we're not going to probably have, you know, based on this, an answer until tomorrow morning, and then you get one, they're even happier. Right.
And that goes back to the assistant thing.
Absolutely.
The client wants to hear from you. And I've been on that side. I've been the assistant that the principal agent just jams you into it and doesn't want to deal with that seller. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you're the face of the whole transaction. Yeah. And if, you know, when you're inexperienced, you know, you don't know everything, and they can snuff that out. But it's not, it's an uncomfortable thing to be as an assistant, but the client knows. They know I didn't hire this assistant, this person's in front of me. I hired you two. Why are you two not talking to me? And that's, you know, again, I think that becomes a problem for some agents that, you know, think they're doing the right thing by growing this team and getting their time back, and they have more time for vacation and weekends. And it's all that stuff's great, but your business will suffer long term.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's funny. It goes back to that whole like magic pill thing. It's like there's no secret sauce. Mm-hmm. It's just doing the work. As simple as that it seems.
Absolutely.
It's just activity.
Yep, it is.
Like I track phone calls, face-to-face events, meetings, and videos. Those are kind of the things that I track. I just track them. And I know if I make a certain amount of each category per week, I'll generate these leads, and I know my closing percentage on those leads I'll get this many applications. Of those apps, I'll close this many. Like I know the numbers, and it's really everything starts at the activity.
Sure.
Yep.
Phone calls, face-to-face, events.
As a single agent and being your own boss, I think that's the biggest challenge for most agents. Do I want to, it's 8:00. Do I want to go to breakfast this morning? Yeah, I'll go to breakfast this
You don't
morning.
have the accountability.
Yeah, you don't have a client that's,
That's the word.
It's the word.
And that's what's good with
That's
this.
what's good
'Cause
about
we do.
Is we both know.
We're talking every morning around
Oh, yeah.
8:30.
We know if we
Yeah.
have an established communication by 8:30, 8:45, then like, okay, let's just like make sure we're all, and that's the funny thing. And it's good. And it's not out of a place of negativity. It's a place out of, we both know what each other's goal is and we know what it's going to take and we got to push each other. We all would love to go home and work from home. And then the dog's barking and then the Amazon guy's at the door and then your spouse is home and then one thing leads to another. You're not productive. And that goes back to what I said about, a typical new agent those things are what they're looking for and they think that's a benefit, but it's such a detractor from your long-term growth.
Yeah.
And look, for some agents, 4, 5, 6 deals a year is all they need.
Yeah.
It's all they want. And to have the flexibility and the time is great. We're just not that way. We're not wired that way. That's, I think, why we get along so well and why working's we don't dread going to work. Would I rather go to a baseball game? Absolutely. But working it's enjoyable. Yeah. And it's pushing each other. It's Andrew got a deal. I didn't. I need a deal. He's getting a listing. I need a listing.
There's that competition.
That competition's very helpful.
We're fighting over who's going to do the biggest deal. Like we're keep going back and forth.
So it makes it fun. That part of it, makes it a challenge, makes it fun, and drives both of us.
Are you seeing any like trends in the market, whether it's either from like a buying standpoint, like trends that like certain clients like absolutely just want to see, or maybe certain styles of homes that have been changing, or types of properties that people want to buy? Have you seen any trends stand out in your mind?
I think people like new or renovated. Charlie touched on that earlier. They still pretty much fly, assuming they're priced appropriately. I wouldn't say right now we're in a market that is trendy regarding the type of home. I would say we're in a market that is driven by price. And I'm sure you would speak to this coming from your world. We are definitely have been in an affordability crisis. Yep. And what we're feeling right now, it's such a weird market because it's a buyer's market, but it's not a great buyer's market because rates are still high relative to where we were 3 years ago. So we've got some buyers that are still holding out, thinking it's going to drop. We have some buyers that are getting pre-approved at 6.5%, think that it's the greatest thing in the world, and they're now like ready to go. I think there are a lot of must or really want to buy buyers out there right now that have just gotten beat up for 2-3 years and they're just burnt out and they're just ready for a home. I'm working with someone like that now. And then the flip side of all that coin is then I've seen a big change in the cash buyer behavior in this area for just different reasons. A lot of it tied to the stock market. I'm getting a lot of comments from who would have been cash clientele in this market during our typical seasonal months, which we're just now exiting, that are holding off because they don't want to sell any equities to fund a real estate transaction. Right. And they're waiting to see what happens with the market and crossing their fingers that it's going to go back up. I have a client that was, I thought, going to purchase a home, and they came back and said, we're going to rent for next season now because of what's going on politically. And we're afraid maybe we'll lose our Social Security. And if we do, we couldn't afford 2 homes. I'm not commenting on that or getting into politics. I'm just saying we hear all sorts of stuff. Right, yeah. So the market's great for one segment of people, and for other people, they're sitting on the sidelines right now. So it's definitely a tricky market to just define easily.
And I think the media is always a challenge because, in order to sell their brand or their product, most of the time it's negative. So when they talk about the housing market today, I had a conversation with a client just before we left. And he was saying, prices are falling everywhere. They're falling in Palm Beach County, West Palm Beach especially. Well, I sent him the data out of the MLS. If you take a look year over year, prices are up. Yeah. They're up over 2% year over year. So if you want to look at the data, that's what the data says. And that's the fact.
And he hung up on you.
Yeah, well, when he was watching the media is saying housing market crash, and they want to send you articles that will cite one home that was listed for $875,000. It should have been listed for $625,000, and it was listed for this, and it sold for this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's uncovering what the facts are and presenting them to your client and reminding them that this isn't Tesla stock you're buying today. This is your home. This is where you're going to have memories, good and bad, and hopefully more are good. This is where you're going to raise your family. This is where you're going to meet their friends. So all of that has to, from a buyer psychology, has to be ingrained in your relationship with them. And from the selling side, you're moving on from that to whole new beginnings. And I think that's an important part. But I see the media being a big challenge because you can't turn any one of them on, no matter which one you affiliate with, and not see something about housing. In some aspect, it's unaffordable. Rates are high. There's all this negative surrounding buying a home right now, where if you bought it and 15 years from now, you'd be so happy with the equity that's built up over time. And I think that's, a big challenge for realtors in today's market and mortgage people is reassuring your clientele that the sky's not falling. It's still way up there.
And looking at the facts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And getting away from the all of the just chaos that sometimes the media creates.
100%. There was this chart that was getting circulated around over the last couple of weeks. Over the last week. It's a Freddie Mac mortgages chart. It's showing a big spike of delinquencies in Freddie Mac mortgages. Well, if you read the fine print of this, it's for multifamily commercial property. But people were citing it, including some very big media people.
Sure.
That this was for residential housing, which it's not. Residential housing delinquencies are very low. Right. I mean, think about it. If you say you lost your job. In this market, unless if you bought in the last year, you're probably at about par. But if you bought a couple years ago, you still have a ton of equity.
Sure.
You're not gonna just let the house go. You're just gonna sell it, take your equity, pay off the mortgage, and go rent for a year and regroup and get a new job.
Right.
So you're not gonna have a lot of foreclosures and a lot of delinquencies because people have such large equity positions. But it's just a good point of that, how the media wants to spin this so people click it and engage. Sure. And it's just crap.
Sure.
It's not real.
Well, Ryan, the big thing is people have put money into those homes also. When you're looking at loan amounts, 80%, 90%, 70%, they've put a good chunk of their money into the home. So they feel they don't want to lose that money. So they're not willing to walk away from homes. This isn't times of yesteryear where you had 100% financing and you finance your closing cost. You didn't have any money in the deal. So you were more apt to walk away from it. Years and years ago, that's not the case now. And most of these buyers that are out there, sellers that are out there that are, job conscious and maybe have lost their job, they have a nest egg. So they were qualified when they purchased it. So there's still some time for them to sell or, find another job. And that delinquency, I think, is not something that's going to come into this market and be a big player in this market.
No, I mean, people were looking at that chart and they were like, oh, this is going to be another, 2007, 2008. I'm like, okay, first off, pump the brakes. First off, this isn't even a residential chart, number one. Number two, the market is completely different from 2006, 7, and 8. The mortgages that we do now, trust me, I got to deal with it every day. Everything is verified, triple verified, quadruple verified. We have all the pay stubs, tax returns, reserves, assets. Everything's verified. You have to have a great credit score. All this stuff. Yeah, it's completely different from back then. Back then, it's like you had 600 credit score, 100% financing, stated income, stated assets, meaning I don't have to verify those assets, like money in the bank. Right. I don't have to verify how much money you make, if you can even make the payment.
Sure.
The appraisers were all corrupt.
Sure.
Because there wasn't the HVCC, which we have now, where appraisals have to go through a third party. I mean, it was just insane. Yeah. So it's nothing like the market was back then. Nothing.
Believe me, as realtors, we feel the pain of getting people approved. They want to buy a home for $800, but they're only qualified for $725. Back in yesteryear, You want to buy a home for $725? Why not $925? Because we can get you qualified. So
And after you close, I'll get you a $100,000 HELOC just for the fun of it.
right. So it's a different market, and look, I like the market we're in because I don't want to go sit down with a homeowner and the homeowner tell me I have 2 months to sell this for foreclosures. That's not the market you want to be in. I was in that. It wasn't fun. Buying and selling, like I said before, is stressful. And, sellers and buyers feel the stress of it. In this market, like Andrew said, you want everybody to feel like they get a good deal, but maybe they could have got a little better on the selling and the buying side. And I think that's a healthy market for both.
I agree. Let's talk a little news. Like just recently, DeSantis has been floating around the idea of abolishing property tax, which obviously that's a far-fetched idea, or maybe limiting property tax, or I think the most recent one was increasing or doing a rebate, $1,000 rebate, I think is what the new push is, or maybe like doubling the homestead exemption, things of that nature. Because if we look at like the property values over the last 3-4 years, they pretty much have doubled in a lot of cases. And so property taxes have doubled, and not necessarily the local government's services have doubled. Yeah. So there's a lot of extra revenue coming in, and so the thought amongst people is like, okay, well, why are the taxes still going up, and can we limit that or reduce that? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it's a complex conversation. I think that there are valid points. I think there are certain things that the governor might not be thinking about. What he is saying, it is specifically geared to benefit homesteaded Florida homeowners, which would be great. Yeah. And I agree. I agree with what you're saying, and he stated this as well, that everything is ballooned so much, but are the goods and services that are being provided to us by local and state government, is there a greater amount of goods and services that are offered now versus before? I would say the answer is probably no. So I agree it should be looked at, but there's a different conversation as well. But I've had 2 clients last week alone that would be looking to purchase a home in Florida as a second or a third home, and they want to know what's going on with it because they also want to partake in there being a benefit. And unfortunately, they don't intend to live here full time, so it's not a benefit. Does that become a detractor to buy a home in Florida if it becomes this heavily publicized and political issue? We don't know. It's far out, but I will say that it is definitely getting headlines. And we're getting asked questions about it daily, if there's been development and, is it going to pass? Is it not going to pass? My guess is whatever it's being discussed today is not going to be what it looks like if it ever passes. Right. I was just reading an article that the state of Florida passed a reduction in sales tax from 7% to 6.25%. That sounds great, but if you do the math, it's saving you, a few $100. You're not saving $5,000 a year on the tax that you spend on consumer goods. You're saving like $300, $400, $500 depending on how much you go out and swipe your credit card or debit card at Target. So it's good. It's definitely good. It's a step in the right direction, but I'm not sure that it's going to be some huge needle mover over time.
Yeah, I think. First off, I love the homestead that we have here. I think it's great because, and you always see this when you're looking at we have a client looking at a property. It's like a $800,000 house, and like the taxes are like $3,000. You're like, why are the taxes $3,000? Mm-hmm. And then you look, the guy's owned it for like 25 years,
and he's homesteaded it.
And he's homesteaded.
Absolutely.
So under homestead, you have a 3% cap at that taxable value as it goes up. Right. So your taxes remain low long term.
Yep.
Which is amazing.
Sure.
So like that piece of our current homestead is awesome.
It is awesome.
And then you get the $50,000 reduction, which, I mean, before houses went up so much in value, was great, especially for, say, a little condo owner, older couple, maybe they own a $100,000 condo, but they get a $50,000 reduction. So now they're only paying taxes on $50,000, which is a huge decrease in tax.
Absolutely.
So personally, I think if you just increase the homestead exemption amount, because, listen, if you live in $1 million house, okay, you can pony up the taxes. Come on. I mean, you're living in $1 million house.
Right.
But the affordability, which we talked about before, that's the big problem. Like the $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 homes, if you had a higher homestead exemption, you bought a $250,000 house and you assessed for $250,000 and you have a $250,000 homestead exemption, bam, now you're not even, maybe you're just paying non-ad valorem tax.
Right.
And you're really helping out the first-time home buyer or so I don't know.
Well, I think that there's two sides to the coin. I think that homestead's very important. But Florida relies a lot on second homes. We rely a lot on snowbirds. And I think that is a big factor with a lot of snowbirds when they're buying down here now, because before they were buying $300,000 condos. Now those same condos are $700,000, $800,000. So a lot of people that can afford a second home can afford the taxes.
Yeah.
But when they start to see taxes coming in at $8,000, $10,000, $12,000, that if they look back historically, or if they look at those people that did homestead in that building and they're at a certain low tax rate, it's hard for some seasonal buyers to stomach. And it has, over the last several years, really been a problem with those type of buyers that are buying. So I champion it, that we're looking at it from the homestead perspective. And believe me, I'm a homeowner, so would I love to see my taxes go away? Yay!
I would.
But from just an educated individual, we know we need taxes in order for the government to operate. But there has to be some accountability. What are they doing with that other, that 100% increase that they have? Where's that money going? Mm-hmm. And government's notorious for, if we have a 100% increase, we're going to spend it.
Of course, yeah.
So, we might get a bunch of new parks out of that, and that'll be great. But at the same time, there has to be some accountability, and there has to be something that does it, because prices are still going up a little bit. They're not going up 100%, but they're still going up. So that's not offering relief for investors who have bought here and are putting rents together for their individuals. Yeah. So there's a lot. It's a very, like Andrew said earlier, it's a complex, very nuanced situation to where you can't, rob from one area to benefit the other. Yeah. So I'm all for a solution, and we hope there's one that comes, but it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah. Well, it's cool they're looking into it. Because obviously, if you could bring the property tax down, then affordability also goes up.
There's absolutely, we can bring property taxes down and insurance rates down,
and mortgage rates,
and mortgage rates.
Affordability,
yeah. Then there goes prices again. But yeah, it's an issue.
And then the other thing, obviously, in news, we talked a little earlier about mortgage rates. They've come down a little bit. Not a ton. How much do you think mortgage rates play on the real estate market?
I think quite a bit. I mean, especially in the first time home buyer market, younger buyers, whatever it might be. Someone that is affected by rates it affects their purchasing power greatly. And as we see it coming down, we are feeling more buyers jump back into the market. And there is a secondary effect where if rates came down, sellers or would-be sellers that are not selling because they have a 3.5% interest rate back from 2021, they're not going to jump necessarily unless they have a major life event. I did. I went from a house with a 2.375 interest rate to a house 7% interest rate. And it was painful, but my family was growing, and it was painful in both directions. It was painful to be in a little house with all those people now and dogs, and then it was painful financially to go and have to walk away from that situation. So I think as it comes down a little bit, I think we'll see more sellers that will become new buyers, and then alleviate and open up new inventory. I think it will have somewhat of a domino effect.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think it's going to unlock a lot of people and allow people to, they've been looking, they get these, we keep it, anytime we pre-approve somebody, we follow up with them in the beginning, weekly, and then we move to bi-weekly, monthly, and but we have 175 pre-approved clients, that just haven't bought a home yet. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of people. And what happens is you get that fatigue. I don't really see anything in the price range. They're just not, they can't find anything. They can't make the numbers work. But as rates come down, instead of looking at maybe $400,000 houses, now they can look at $500,000 houses with the same payment.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's going to spark things up again. So hopefully rates come down. We don't know, when they will or if they will.
Yeah, I would say that we do. If they do, I think we'll see another appreciating market, at least in our area here in South Florida. We're still in an appreciating market at 2.5%. If you look in this kind of Palm Beach County area, it still is appreciating. So if rates all of a sudden went to 5.5, I think that would definitely catch fire in the area again.
Yeah, I think nationwide they're still forecasting like 2 to 3% increase this year in property values. Even Palm Beach County's forecast at 4% increase. That's why I always tell clients, like, they always say, hey, is it a good time to buy a house right now? I'm like, if the numbers work, yes.
Right. Do you need a house? It's a good
When
time
the
to buy.
market was when the worst time to buy a house was probably like 2005, like right at the top of the bubble. Sure. Mm-hmm. But even if you bought then, you wouldn't have regretted it today.
No.
Because the house probably doubled in value since then.
Absolutely.
If you can afford to hold it, but yeah.
Yeah. If you had to sell the next year, or you had to, you're forced to sell, or you can afford it, then that's a different story. But over time, the values of homes are going to go up. It's proven.
Absolutely.
So is it a good time to buy a house? Yes.
I would say yes.
It's always a good time to buy.
Always buy. Yeah. Always buy.
So the old joke is like, I've never met a realtor that said it was a bad time to buy a house.
Yeah. We're the wrong guy to ask.
Yeah. A little biased over here.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Well, that was, I think that was some really solid content. I wanted to end with a little rapid fire questions, little local rapid fire. So, favorite Florida activity? Charlie?
Golfing.
Golf?
Boating.
Boating? Oh, man, we have the best waters down here. Favorite restaurant? Local?
Oh, goodness. There's so many. I would say just because it's on the water and the food's pretty good, it's Utiki for me.
Utiki, great spot.
I like the Beacon up in Jupiter. Beacon at Charlie and Joe's, phenomenal. Yep, absolutely phenomenal.
That whole stretch there on the Jupiter Inlet.
Oh, it's beautiful.
You got the lighthouse. You can take the little tiki boat out, cruise around. Oh,
don't forget leftovers on that whole gamut there. Yep. Very good food.
Oh, so good. Favorite business book or podcast?
Over the years, I've always defaulted back to Dave Ramsey. And I don't know why, but I get away from it, and then I go back. I get away and go back, and I think it's rooted in the fact that a lot of what he talks about is living below your means. And I think that that's directly applicable to realtors. Someone told me when I first got in this business, this is a business you have to be like a squirrel. You got to collect your nuts. You just got to hold on to them because, like we've been talking about for the last hour, there's going to be good markets and bad markets. You might make X one year, but the next year you're making Y. And if you're still living like you made X, then you're gonna be hurting. So
right.
I kind of always default back to a lot of those principles.
I took his course probably 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And then since then I haven't had any revolving debt.
Yeah.
That was like the one thing that I got out of my life. Mm-hmm. Used to have like a bunch of credit cards and just, constantly paying this to pay this. And it was just a mess.
Not a fun way to live. No.
Yeah, he's really
a lot of discipline to not be that way because it's shoved down our throats as Americans, just consuming credit cards, 0% financing, all this stuff. It's
Trust me, I see it. Every application, like the majority of clients, the majority of people in general have a lot of credit card debt. A lot.
Yep. Yeah. Believe it.
Business.
Well, I'm going to go on the lighter side. I'm going to say Pat McAfee. That's what I would say, just for enjoying, just listening to the podcast, kind of escaping a little bit. That reality of life, just jumping in. Oh, that's funny. Okay, let's go back to work. So.
Lunch with one person, dead or alive?
My wife. Because I don't get enough time. 24/7 realtor, haven't had a day off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say my dad. Dad, I would love to go back, talk to him. Yeah. As I've, family's gotten older, I kind of now have a better understanding of his struggles.
Yep.
So that would be the one person I'd want to go back and have a great conversation with.
Nice. That's awesome. And best business advice you ever received?
I've touched on so many of them already, so I'm just trying to think of something new for you. Charlie?
Well, I think it was one of my first jobs when I first got out of school. I was in medical sales, medical supply sales. And I went I went to my first sales meeting as a professional, and I'll never forget, there was an older gentleman who had been the national sales manager and moved back into a sales role. And they asked him, they said, hey, we're doubling this as a retirement party also. So can you speak to everybody and tell them what your thing is about sales and what has driven you and what has made you most successful? And he walked up to the mic and he looked out, and he'd had a little bit too much to drink, and he just looked around and he said, see all the people, see everybody. And I think, in real estate, that's helpful because you never know where your next deal's coming from. So you always have to talk to everybody.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the really good points that I've ever had in that realm.
All right.
Nice.
My parting words. My wife's grandfather said to me when I was probably, 24, 25, he said, if you want to make a lot of money and you're not a professional athlete, go into sales. And I don't think without those words I would have ever gone into sales. Just point blank, wasn't my personality, and I made it my personality because, I'm always striving for more, and it's worked out.
Sales it's a learned skill.
Yeah.
It's maybe some people are born with it. They just have that pizzazz and the charisma, and it's like it's funny because like when I grew up, like I was the kid, I was like a fat boy, I was picked on. Like I did not want to talk in front of anybody, super shy, like that, which is strange. Right now I'm like in this position. But growing up, sales for me has been a learned skill, like how to present, how to talk to people, like all the books that I've taken, so many Dale Carnegie courses, like it's all learned. How to create rapport, how to have conversations, how to, like, what do you talk to people about when there's uncomfortable silence? Like,
The hardest step is just putting yourself out there for the first time.
Yep.
Yeah.
You got to be able to accept rejection and not it affect you, you as a person.
Yeah.
Because it's not personal.
Exactly. Gentlemen, this was
Thank you,
fun.
Ryan.
Sweet. Appreciate you
Thank
coming
you.
in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right,
Very
guys.
much.
We'll put your info below. Anybody wants to work with you guys are awesome. I think the world of you, and I love the combination that you guys have, and I just know you guys do such a good job for your clients.
We appreciate that.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming in
Yeah.
today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.